Howdy! I am here at the geographical center of Texas, or as close as you can get to it, an imaginary point which divides the state into four different sections. We are about 400 miles from Texline up in the Panhandle, 400 miles from El Paso, 400 miles from Brownsville, about 340 miles from the Sabine River. So this is the center of Texas, or as close as you can get here on the highway. Very excited to be here and to talk about all the history of this region of Texas. Hope you'll enjoy it. Pardon me, Padre. Howdy. Welcome to Presidio San Saba. This is just by Menard, Texas. This was the site of a fort, a Spanish fort established in 1757. Now, what you see behind me are some remnants of that fort, the stones themselves, but has all been reconstructed using some of the actual materials, some of the just other limestone in the area in the 1930s. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the Presidio, mainly focusing on its major claim in Texas history, which is the attack that happened on the mission San Saba, about 4 miles north of us here. And kind of just walk through that infamous event. We can definitely claim is the first event in Texas history that we actually have Western style art of, along with so many other things. So the Presidio. Now, when this was originally established, it was Presidio Santa Cruz de Amarillas in 1757. So going back a little bit, San Antonio is established in 1717. The Spanish missionaries were there to help convert the Lipan Apache that were in the area. But as happens very often in the history of the Spanish missions, they were not completely willing to convert to Catholicism and change their entire life to how the Spanish wanted them to live. And so there was some strife between differing bands of the Lipan Apache and what the Spanish missionaries were doing in San Antonio. This led to a lot of conflict, but by the 1750s, a settlement had been reached between at least the bands in the San Antonio area and the missionaries and the soldiers protecting the missionaries. The Lipan Apache then came to the missionaries and said, why don't you set up another mission far away from here on the San Saba River? And so they listened, and they did just that. They got together with, there was a financier, a man who owned many mines in the interior of Mexico, Pedro de Terros. He had a brother who was in the clergy. So Father de Terros, and they set everything up to set up this mission and fort here on the San Saba River. We're going to get more into that as soon as the garbage truck is done doing its job. Thank you to Republic Garbage Services for cleaning up after the park and the country club here in Menard. Dumpster's been emptied. We can now continue on with our story. This is the San Saba River. About 4 miles ahead is where they established the Mission de San Saba. 4 miles doesn't seem very much to us with our modern vehicles and the way that we can get around today, but was quite a bit of distance, even just on horses, but especially if you're on foot. And that's going to come up a couple times in the story. The idea was to separate the Spanish soldiers, the fortification here, from the mission. That the mission was trying to, let's say, they were the sugar water to the vinegar of trying to attract the natives in this area. So the idea was, if they're far away from the scary soldiers and they're offering all sorts of tobacco and chocolate and coffee and all of these special trinkets and things, that they could buy the affection of the Lipan with cigarettes and chocolate and then introduce them to their friend Jesus. And that the soldiers would scare them away. But the soldiers still very much need to be there in case the whole cigarettes and chocolate thing didn't work out. So they separated themselves by 4 miles. You'd actually have to ford the river twice in order to get to the mission from the fort. But Father President de Terros, he sets up everything at the mission up there. As we go through the fort, you'll see all this stone. That wasn't here yet. This was still wood palisades, as some of it in the Hakal style. So just sticks and mud put together to make the wood parapets here. The same over there at the mission. They arrive in the spring of 1757. There were not a whole lot of customers. They finally get a traveling band of Lipan to stop at the mission, I believe in July of 1757. They're hunting buffalo and things, and they say that they're going to come back to the mission. So they keep on going, and then a handful come back to the mission in the fall of 1757. Now, the Lipan were the ancestral enemy of the Comanche and a lot of the other northern bands. And what ends up happening is a whole a coalition force, you might say, of Native American tribes bands together, and they want to punish the Lipan. Now, the Spanish believe that this is all just because that the Spanish are showing favor to the Lipan, and the Comanche and their associate tribes want to be shown this same kind of favor. It could be that, or it could just be, there's Lipan here, we're going to go after them. Either way, there are some attacks that start happening through December, January, February of 1758. There are horses that have been stolen, and it is not the Lipan who are doing it. It is the Comanche and other allies. This causes the colonel here, so Colonel Parilla, to advise the Father President de Terros, who's 4 miles away, that he should probably bring a lot of his forces is the wrong word, but a lot of his people here under the protection of the fort. Father President doesn't do it. He stays there at the mission with the hopes that, again, this whole separation of the army and the church is going to attract the Lipan to him, and that he's going to be just fine. March 16th of 1758. There are about 1,500. That is, one account says 1,500. Accounts vary from a few hundred to over 2,000. It's Comanche, but it's also, again, a coalition force of Texas tribes. The Tejas tribe, where we get Texas from, Caddo, Bedis, Wichita, or not exactly Wichita, but a tribe associated with the Wichita, surround the mission. And demand to get the Lipan. They want to kill the Lipan natives that are inside the mission. And we'll talk a little bit more about what happened then in just a moment. This is a 1/3 scale reproduction of what the chapel at the mission would have looked like. This is on the same property as the Presidio, but this is the sort of style and around the same dimensions, just shrunk down to 1/3 scale of what the largest building at the mission was, which would have been the chapel. On March 17th, 1758, there were anywhere between several hundred, 1,500, some estimates at 2,000 of Comanche and their allies who surround the mission. So the mission, again, would have been very large, not just this little small building behind me, but would have surrounded the entire complex. And they gathered at the gate. One of our best accounts of this is from the only clergyman to survive. That was Father Molina. So Father Molina saw the advance of all of these hostile Indians to the Lipan, and the Lipan, whatever few of them were at the mission, all went to Father President Detero's chambers. That was the most fortified location. It also had some arms there, and so they locked themselves inside of Father Detero's chambers. There were 2 soldiers that were at the gate. One of them is, they always refer to him as Son of Gutierrez. And then another one whose name starts with an A, but I'm not remembering right now. They start speaking with the natives outside of the gate. And there are ones who are familiar with the Spanish language, but they're also giving hand gestures and figuring out how to communicate that way. And somehow they convince these 2 soldiers that they are friendly. That they are just there for some more of the cigarettes and chocolate, and that's it. So the 2 soldiers go back to Father President Deteros. While all this is happening, Father Molina goes to the chapel and tells the father there to stop Mass. They were just going to Mass at that time and told him to stop Mass at that moment because they're about to be under attack. Molina and Deteros then accept that the soldiers' word that the natives outside are friendly. But while that's happening, the natives decide that they're not going to wait for them to open the gate, and they push open the gate themselves and come in to the mission. There is a Comanche chief. At least that's what Father Molina believes, because he's wearing a full buffalo robe with buffalo horns on his headdress. And he's wearing, though, a French officer's uniform, or at least the coat is a French officer's coat. Rides in to the mission. And as Father Deteros is passing out tobacco and chocolate and trinkets and all these things, Father Molina has 2 big bundles of tobacco, and he offers them up to the Comanche chief. And the Comanche grabs them and laughs at him contemptuously, and then rides to a different part. And after Father Deteros has distributed what he wanted to distribute as a peace offering, that was not enough. The Comanche and their allies start raiding. Not full-on violence yet, but they start rummaging through the kitchen and taking out kettles and pots and finding other things throughout the mission and grabbing them. And then they start speaking with Father President Deteros, and Deteros says, asking about the fort, that they want to go to the fort and get more things. And Deteros says, I will do that for you. I'll write a note for you to take to the fort to Colonel Perea to let you know that you have my blessing. There is a Tejas chief who is going to go on that mission. And he decides that he likes the horse of Deteros, so the Father President's horse. He goes over there, and Father President Deteros says, no, that's my horse. You can't take that horse. And the Tejas chief listens to none of it, and he just grabs it, and he takes off. He goes to the fort. So that he takes somewhere between 3 and 5, I believe, with him to the fort. You then have the rest of the Comanche and their allies who are pretty insistent in asking, where are the Lipan? Where are the Lipan? Where are you hiding the Lipan? We have no problem with you, but we need to punish and kill the Lipan. And Father Deteros is saying he doesn't know where they are, that they're not here at this moment. He's covering for them. As this is happening, however long it takes for the Tejas chief to come here to the fort and then go the 4 miles back to the mission, he does. And by the time that he comes back, he comes through the gate and he says that 3 of my men are dead. That they killed them at the fort. This is your fault, Father President Deteros. And Deteros says, we'll clear this all up. I will go with you. I will go with you to the fort to let Colonel Perea know that you have my blessing for passage. And as Father President Deteros is leaving the gate of the mission, he is shot. And then that just opens up for ransacking and violence and burning of the buildings. Whoever wasn't killed immediately went to the chambers of Father Deteros. So that would be Father Molina, was one of those. They hunker down in there as all the rest of the mission is burning. They are there eventually. It was a little confusing in the account. It sounds like they come to the chapel and then they go back. And it's just burning and loud noises and musket fire and chants for hours, as just whatever few Lipan and Father Molina and a couple of others are just hunkered in Deteros's chambers. Eventually, one of the soldiers shows up. He has dragged himself after being attacked by the Comanche and stripped and nearly scalped. He dragged himself from wherever he was to the mission and talks with Molina about how many there are out there, and that Perea is sending a force, but they were already scattered, and that all hope seems pretty much lost. And then what happens next is that they plan their escape. How are they going to get out of the chambers of the Father President who is now dead? They all saw him die. We'll get to what happens next in just a moment. One of our best accounts of what happened during the attack comes from Sergeant Flores. Sergeant Flores was not literate, but he did give a verbal testimony to Colonel Parrilla, who then wrote it all down. Take that into account as we go into what is supposed to be and what I would think very likely is Sergeant Flores's account of what happened. So Sergeant Flores was, at the time that the attack was, the initial attack was happening at the mission, he was here at the fort patrolling the walls here at the fort. He gets orders to go and see Colonel Parrilla. Parrilla informs him that the mission is under attack and that he wants him to take eight soldiers to go over to the mission, which is very likely surrounded by about 1,500. But the soldiers here are spread pretty thin. There were already two groups of soldiers that had left the fort before any of this had happened, either to escort mule trains to San Antonio or for other purposes. So Colonel Parrilla, expecting those Indians to come here, can really only spare 8. So Flores gets his 8 soldiers. They ford the river twice. By the second time they ford the river, they are, I believe they said 3 leagues. Three quarters of a league, so about 3,000 acres away from the mission, and already they can see it completely surrounded. And Flores is one who says it's 1,500, and that it's not just the amount; it's that they're armed with muskets. This was, according to Sergeant Flores, the first time he had ever seen a Comanche armed with muskets. What makes this such an important turn point in Spanish history and Native American history here in Texas is that this is the first time, according to the things that I've read about the battle here, that these soldiers had ever seen Comanches armed with muskets. This all the time that they had been here. Sergeant Flores had been in Texas for 30 years. He had only ever seen the natives here with lances and bows and arrows and clubs and knives, had never seen them armed. And they are actually armed with French muskets. So that shows you how all of the trade is happening at this time, that the French settlements near Louisiana are getting arms over to the Comanche all the way out here at the edges of Comancheria in West Texas. He actually encounters, so the 8 of them, they encounter some of those Native Americans, and 3 of them are wounded or killed. There's actually one that's going to be able to get away, but we'll talk about that a little later. Flores is able to make it back here to the fort. And what happens here is they don't know exactly what's happening. On his way here, he meets up with some of the Lipan that came with him from San Antonio. And they tell Flores that it's lost, that the mission, they've lit it all on fire. Everyone needs to go into the fort and hunker down. And that's what happens, is that a large force of those natives, the Comanche and their allies, leave the mission and come here to the fort and just surround it. And many of them are in these trees around here and taunting, wanting this attack to happen, but are not able to get, and it's just wood walls, it's not these big stone walls that were here, but are still just not able to get into the fort, and the Spanish soldiers are able to defend whatever waves of attack happen, and eventually those natives go away. We'll get a little bit more into what happened in the aftermath in a moment. This is the interior of the 1/3 scale reproduction chapel at the Presidio San Saba. I'm now going to weave in between Father Molina, Sergeant Flores, and Colonel Parilla's accounts of what happened at the end of the battle. So Molina and a few others were able to escape once the main bands had left the mission to go to the fort and lay siege to the fort. After the siege of the fort proved unfruitful and they disbanded, Colonel Parilla and Sergeant Flores did a reconnaissance mission along with several others to the mission. And what they found, at least what they described of what they found, was pretty horrific. As they went into the gates, the first body that they saw was Father President de Terros, lying where he was when he was shot at the beginning of the battle. They were then able to walk a few paces forward and see the head of one of the soldiers, I believe Ireas was his name, and then the leg of the son of Gutierrez. They continue to go in, and Parilla says at least 8 Spaniards were killed and 17 Lipan were killed. All of them, as was the tradition of the Comanche, their bodies were mutilated to prevent them from going on to their rewards. As they entered the chapel, they found the effigy of Saint Francis. That statue had been decapitated, and then there was also a father here who was praying, and he was decapitated, and his head was mutilated, eyes taken out and scalped. They went all through the mission and just found they had left behind all of these different, just big open barrels and containers of chocolate and white flour and tobacco and all of these things that they weren't even completely empty, that they had just opened them, ransacked them, and then lit them on fire. They even found that the cats of the mission had been killed. This was such a shock to the Spanish troops that immediately there were talks of reprisals against them, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. This was such a horrific act in the eyes of the Spaniards that they would go on to make art out of it, and we'll talk more about that, about the first painting of an event of Texas history is the attack on the chapel on the mission San Saba. Once it was clear that the threat of the Comanche and their allies was no longer present, Colonel Parilla organized a whole report to be sent to the viceroys. News of this traveled very quickly to San Antonio and then traveled to Mexico City. And Colonel Parilla suggested that there needs to be a reprisal attack on the Comanche and their Northern Plains allies for this attack, and the what they had done to the mission, burned the mission to the ground, killed at least 8 Spaniards, many of them clergymen. So Colonel Perea wanted a reprisal attack. That does not happen for a year and a half. So the attack here at the mission and also here at the Presidio is March 17th through 18th of 1758. The actual reprisal campaign does not start until the fall of 1759. But Perea leads that expedition. They trace some of the bands associated with the Wichita up to what is now Spanish Fort on the Red River, just a little bit outside of Wichita Falls. And there, it doesn't go very well. Again, thousands of Native Americans against much smaller forces on the Spanish part. I think even some men are killed. Some artillery is just left on the Red River as they hastily make their escape. But again, I think that's also a story that we'll have to cover in another time when we head up Wichita Falls way. Colonel Perea, after all of that, does, I believe, either go to Mexico City or even goes all the way back to Spain and commissions a piece of art about this attack. And that painting, the painting of the attack on Mission San Saba, is the first easel art painting of an event in Texas history. And that event occurred right here in 1758. That is one of the legacies of this. The other being that everything had changed. The way that Spanish and then later forces would have to go up against Comanche and other Plains Indians, they definitely have the same technology at this moment. Other things will occur, like in the 1830s when Anglos have repeating colts. That will be another big change, but the Comanche will also get a hold of those a few years later as well. But at this point in 1758, it is an exact parity of arms between the Spanish and the Comanche. And that's going to maintain all the way through to Anglo settlement in this area in 100 years later. I think it's also very interesting that Perea launches a reprisal attack that goes all the way to the Red River. Just a few miles up the road is Fort McKavett. A lot of those soldiers were taken up in Mackenzie's column in the Red River War against those very same tribes, or many of them, 120 years later. So that fight was still going on and going very strong between the European Western settlement people here in this area and the Comanche and their Plains allies. So this is a really great spot to visit. There's so much more history that happened here, but I wanted to limit what we were talking about to just the things regarding that event in March of 1758. But this continues to run through the 1760s, eventually does change its name to, I believe, Real Presidio San Saba, and then is abandoned in the 1860s, and bits and pieces are just taken out, because why go to a quarry when there's an abandoned fort right here that you can take all these and make a really good home out of? Then in the Centennial, the Texas Centennial in 1936, the Works Progress Administration, WPA, makes a whole campaign and project out of reconstructing what you see here. So I'd encourage you to come if you are anywhere near the geographic center of Texas, if you are in the Menard area, if you are just going on I-10 past Junction, go ahead and take that road up to Menard and take a look at this. This is a really important piece of Texas history. that wraps up this episode of Chandler's Travels. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, word of mouth, anything you can do to spread the word about this channel. All of that helps us in growing the channel so that I can take even more of you along with me on my journeys. Thank you again for watching. Until next time, vaya con Dios.